The August 25th, 2015 meeting of the North Kingstown School Committee is now called to order. Can you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Healy, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Avanzato? Mr. Blasbog?
Here.
Mrs. Clarkin?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. McGovern?
Here.
Mrs. Held? Here. Thank you.
Mrs. Healy, can you please recite the calendar?
Wednesday, August 26, 2015, there will be a facilities subcommittee meeting at 5 p.m. in the Central Administration offices. Thursday, September 3rd, teachers and staff report to school. Monday, September 7th is Labor Day, schools and offices. Tuesday, September 8th, school committee work session, 7 p.m. in the North Kingstown High School. That same day, September 8th, is the first day of school for students and kindergarten orientation. And Monday, September 14th, there is a school committee planning session at 6 p.m. in the Central Administration offices.
So it doesn't look like we had somebody sign up for citizens' comments but crossed their name off. Is there anyone else who? Sure. Can you please? So both of you then? Hopefully I'll pronounce your name right. I usually mess it up. Mary Ellen Benedict.
Yes. Okay. Well, I'm here to implore to all of you. We just moved to this community in May from Cranston, and we bought in Mount Laurel Estates, and we signed up our children for school. And 2 weeks ago, we got a call on a Friday afternoon that our daughter, Grace, who's going into 4th grade, that there was not space for her and that she would be moved from Stony Lane to Fishing Cove. We were obviously very upset about this. We moved to this community so that our children could have the wonderful experience of Stony Lane. We saved up our money, moved into, Mount Laurel Estates, and, we're just very disappointed that this happened. My husband made an appointment with Dr. Auger, and they had conversations, and I'm hopeful that you will approve the 4th grade teacher for Stony Lane. That's why we're here. And I have another daughter. I have 3 children. One goes to daycare up in Cranston, and then we have 2 other girls, and we'd like them to stay together at Stony Lane. And I'm hopeful that you will pass the 4th grade teacher.
Thank you. Stacy Bueller.
Hi. I am here for pretty much the same reason. We recently moved in the middle of June, and making the decision was definitely persuaded to move into that area specifically because our children would be in Stony Lane. I have a 3rd grader and a 4th grader. I also got the same phone call. I also experienced the same disappointment. Just visiting the school and trying to get the kids acclimated. I'd like them to stay together, so there was that issue where one would go and one wouldn't. And that's pretty much it. I just hope that you would pass the 4th grade teacher at Stony Lane. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Auger, can you please provide your superintendent's report?
Sure. As both parents mentioned, I just want to make a couple of brief comments on enrollment. The committee is aware of this, but I want to make the community aware that enrollment has been better than projected district-wide. We had been projecting and budgeting for 4,103 students, and we were budgeting for 3,924 students, and as of today, we're at 4,045. So we're 121 over our projection, which is a very good sign. And you know, there's as much as we can do projections for enrollment. There's a lot of this is a guessing game in terms of who's going to move into the community and who is moving out. And these things don't always come in nice, neat packages to make it so that we add teachers nice and evenly around the district. In this case, we have a spike in grade 4 at Stony Lane. Last week, we were addressing a spike of over 14 over in grade 2 at Hamilton, and another 8 over at kindergarten in Hamilton. I'm pleased to report that our kindergarten numbers, we were projecting for 209 students, and we are now at 217. And that's 14 over what we had last year for kindergarten. So I'm absolutely convinced that that is an indication of adding the full-day kindergarten and fewer students, you know, attending to charter schools. So tonight's proposal that I'm making to add a teacher in the 4th grade at Stony Lane and another for the 6th grade at Davisville, where we are currently over capacity for our teachers who teach the core subject areas in 6th grade at Davisville, is doable right now because we are ahead on charter tuitions. And so I think that move, you know, was a good reminder to the community of what a great school district that this is. Very proud when so many parents came out to talk about their great experiences with the community and how they wanted that supported, and I think it has had a ripple effect, and we're experiencing that right now. So that's a very good sign. Also, for my superintendent's report, I would just like to introduce to the community, well, she doesn't need an introduction because she's already been a part of the community for many years, Ms. Donna Sweet, as the new assistant principal for North Kingstown High School. Mr. Grimes, who we recently hired, took a position as the principal of Westerly High School. We wish him well. It is his hometown and a job that only opened after he had come here, and it was one of those jobs that he felt he couldn't resist applying for. So, again, I wish him well. As far as our situation, Ms. Sweet has been a part of our guidance department for many years, and you know, as an administrator and as a parent, she was a guidance counselor for my 2 kids, and you know, nothing but a tremendous work ethic, very positive team player for the high school, and a real leader. And in any high school, a person who becomes the head of the guidance department, that is a very kind of pseudo-administrative role. You're a part of many decisions about the placement of students in particular in classes and giving them guidance for their future, talking in front of large groups of parents on orientation nights and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of administrative practice that goes along over those years. She's also done her principal residency in North Kingstown High School with Dr. Mansieri. So we know firsthand what great work she has done for us with that, and she's someone who can absolutely hit the ground running and has garnered a great deal of respect, not only from the administration, but the teachers of the high school and teachers and parents throughout the North Kingstown schools community. So very proud to be making that proposal tonight. So that concludes my superintendent's report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed one thing here. Dr. Humbard reminded me. There is something I'm very proud of coming up that is about our professional development. This is a year where, because our parents have gotten back to us, parents and teachers have gotten back to us, and the school community has asked that we start school after Labor Day. So, and then lo and behold, Labor Day came on the latest possible day in September it could, so our kids are only going back to school on September 8th, which seems like forever. But on September 3rd and the 4th, a Thursday and the Friday, we have 2 professional days. We front-loaded 2 of them this year because of the technology rollout. I'm going to be making a lot more noise about the technology rollout because we're 1 year away from going one-to-one with our students. This year is a preparation year for our teachers. Dr. Humbird and Kim Ramos, who is our technology lead teacher in the district, have done a tremendous amount of work with our technology team and with, I'm going to let her give you the details, but many, many teachers in the district, in joining with Jamestown teachers to be a part of that day, to lead a Google Summit, our own technology summit here in the high school with 500-plus educators involved. And it's going to be a great day of learning about using technology tools for K-12. So I'll let Dr. Humbird, or ask Dr. Humbird, to talk more about that.
So this is, or what we're really trying to do is replicate the Google Summit that we went to last year. It was a regional summit. It was held in Coventry. We had 2 days. We had 27 of our staff members who attended. And then from that, we got our idea for the model classroom for this coming school year, which is very exciting. But then we also thought that it would be great if we could, with the rollout of the Chromebooks to the staff, if we could do a training. And so we set aside September 4th to do that. So we're going to begin in a general session at the high school at 8 o'clock. And from there, we'll have 2 breakout sessions, and lunch will be provided to the staff. And then following that, we will have a 3rd breakout session, and then we will conclude with the general session. The best thing about all of this is that all of the training is going to be done by our staff and the Jamestown staff as well. And so I think it's the best kind of PD because the teachers know what the needs are. And we had a training actually where we put all this together in April, and it was 2 days. We worked with the Fuse teachers that were helping us last year. We're in a contract with them for this coming school year too. They work, the Fuse representatives work to foster blended learning in all of the schools in Rhode Island, well, the 18 districts they've been working with. So we've gotten support from them, and the whole thing is just very exciting. So so we'll all be there on September 4th. If you have any chance to stop in, we will be, as Dr. Auger said, there are 560 of us that will be participating in this event. So come and check it out if you have any time.
Thank you. Are there any exemptions to the consent agenda?
D3 and E8.
Mr. Jones?
E5. E4.
4. Is that it? Can I have a motion to approve all other items on the consent agenda except D3, E4, E5, and E8?
Motion to approve the consent agenda without items D3, E4, E5, E8.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Mrs. McGovern, you exempted D3.
D3 is a recommendation for hiring a consultant, and I would like to make a motion to issue an RFP for this work.
Dr. Auger?
Sure. You know, I want to explain why this was placed on the agenda the way it is. you know, the NESDEC organization is a very unique organization. It is currently the organization we use to help us with projections. They help over 250 school districts in New England, and they're even the go-to source for the Rhode Island Department of Education to get demographic information. They, you know, in my opinion, they're in a class by themselves, but if it makes the committee feel better to do an RFP, I'm okay with that. It'll take a little time, clearly, and probably in a month or so we would be back to you with a proposal, whether it's for NESDEC or another organization, but you can feel comfortable knowing that we've gone through the process.
So I actually was one of the school committee, I guess the only school committee member that attended this presentation. We have a long-term strategic task force that we've established. Mr. McKay from the town side was there, myself, Mr. Bergeron, some people from administration, and some other representatives, and I was very impressed with the presentation. However, I agree that it would be a good idea to do an RFP just to solidify that this would possibly be the best company to go along with. So, given that, I'll second Mrs. McGovern's motion to send that out for an RFP. Mr. Jones, discussion?
Thank you. Yeah, I concur, and I'm glad Mrs. Clarkin brought up the point that those folks came in. I think it's important for the community. You know, sometimes they see there's studies and there's money going out, and you know, we had a study for the security stuff, which has already yielded some fruitful changes. I think as one of the charges this committee is taking on in thinking about posturing the district along with the administration for not just the issues we tend to deal with now, which take most of our time, but thinking about 4, 5, and 6 years from now. And while we'll have to see what the outcomes are, we want to be a district that is thinking ahead in terms of, you know, do we have the right buildings? Should we consolidate? If so, where? What makes sense? And we don't want this sprung upon us a few years from now. We know we have buildings that are anywhere from 60 to 80 years old in some cases, except for this high school. And at some point, pouring millions of dollars to keep them up sort of needs to be weighed against what would be the benefit of building a new building or some other modification. So I know there's other parts, the town council and our asset management have some of work to do in here, but I think it's important that we as a committee and administration provide the data and the thoughtful analysis behind it for whatever recommendations go forward. So I agree we need to do a study. It might make sense because I think they provided us a lot of data already that, you know, maybe it might come in a little cheaper. So
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Just say a quick word.
Sure, Dr.
I
O'Shea?
just want to acknowledge that with your vote just now that we have hired Ms. Sweet to be our new assistant principal for North Kingstown High School. So congratulations to you. We're in good hands. I know your family's here, so, you know, didn't want to prolong the agony on that.
Congratulations. Mr. Blasberg, you exempted item E4.
First, I'd like to make a motion to approve item E4, please.
Second?
So I just want to point out, we had a couple parents talk about this tonight, and I want to apologize on behalf of all of us that one of your first experiences with our school district was what you just went through. Unfortunately, you know, the beginning of the year results in a lot of moving parts when it comes to school enrollment, and we have to try to be responsible about, you know, adding teachers where necessary, but yet doing what we can to, you know, manage resources so that we're not, you know, adding a $65,000 unbudgeted salary item for maybe, you know, one kid, for example. Thankfully for you folks, and we're happy, I think, about to approve this item. This particular discrepancy for the number of kids, there's just no way to move as many people around as would have happened, and we'd like to avoid it whenever possible, so I'm happy to support that.
So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Jones, you exempted item E5.
Yes, I'll start a motion to approve E5.
Second?
Thank you. I just wanted to point out, I thank Dr. Auger and Principal Logan and Ms. McGarvin, who came and sort of, went through the analysis behind justifying this. I know the committee took some personnel cuts there that I think at the time made sense. Sometimes you have to revisit those as the situation changes. I would say that as part of that discussion, I know Dr. Auger mentioned, I think it's important that while we still have 2 middle schools now, that parents feel that whichever middle school they go to, their children are getting a education that's worthy, we hope, of being in North Kingstown. And so I know, hopefully, as Dr. Auger mentioned, if we're thinking down the road and long-term, and potentially maybe we'll only have 1 middle school at some point, that we continue to have, the administrators at those schools work with Dr. Auger and Dr. Humbard, that we get that consistency that we have between those 2 middle schools, and we keep that going. So I think this is appropriate, but I hope that it keeps the dialogue going with our administrators in terms of looking at both middle schools and how they operate, and both finding efficiencies to be, respectful of being good stewards of resources, and ensuring that both schools are preparing our students for their journey to the high school.
I have a motion. Mr. Blasberg?
And I just want to point out, as Dr. Auger mentioned, we have some flexibility here due to our the fact that the charter school enrollments are lower than we had expected. It gives us the ability to add these items within our budget. So it's, while it's an unbudgeted item, we're able to move the funds around. We're not exceeding the budget.
So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Mrs. McGovern, you exempted item E8.
I'll defer to Mr. Glassboro.
For E8, I'm going to make a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation to suspend Teacher X without pay for the 2015-16 school year and termination from employment thereafter for good and just cause shown.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. I'm going to back up a little bit here. Under routine items, can I have a motion to seal the executive session minutes of August 25th, 2015?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And I can disclose that there were no executive session votes taken at the August 25, 2015 executive session. Mrs. King, do you have anything to report for the 2014-15 school budget?
No.
For the 2015-2016 school budget, we have an item for an allocation of $15,000 to the athletics fund for the FY16 budget.
This is an item that came out of the discussion that we had previously about athletic funding. Talking with Mr. Haig, who is here this evening to answer any questions you may have. We have had discussions about, to make all sports full, as fully funded as one would expect. We were looking at a number of roughly $35,000. The school department has already repurposed $5,000 toward that end. And what I'm asking for in this is an allocation of $15,000 to athletics, with the understanding that the remaining money would come from expanded gate receipts, other revenue sources that Mr. Haig can put together, and a renewed and shared commitment on behalf of all teams to find the remaining dollars, and with the understanding that that would not set a major new burden for teams, but one that everyone understands they equally share in, and one that is relatively light, and compared to some of the fundraising that say the hockey team, for instance, has had to do the major amount they've had to come up with. So, again, with trending a little bit better than we expected, we feel like we can afford to do this right now, and I think that this should put this issue to rest for quite a while.
Mr. McGovern?
Will this also address middle school sports funding?
Mr. Hague is indicating yes, it would. And I don't know, Howie, would you like to come to the mic and talk a little bit about some of the details?
When I reread your memo, it seemed like we were about 15,000 short in the high school and 15,000 short in the middle school, and there were some options, and it wasn't.
Yeah, so this would cover the additional money would help to go towards that 35,000, making us about 15,000 short, which I'm going to make up through the gate receipts. We're raising the gate this year and offering that season pass option like we had talked about, so we're hoping to get some additional money there, and then we'll see where we are at the end of the year. And it might take a big chunk out of the gate receipt, which we use for big expenditures like scoreboards. We need new high jump mats and things like that. Those are some things we'll have to look at, trying to stretch those bigger purchases. If it looks like it's unsustainable, then we'll have to look at other options, possible sponsorships for seasons or advertising in the stadium and some things like that. But I think it gives us a year to make up that difference, through the gate receipt account, and just kind of crunch what we spend and see where we're at the end of the year. So some of it fluctuates just based on how many teams make the playoffs, go deep in the playoffs. But I've already explained to teams that they might have to fundraise a little more, particularly the teams that haven't done so in the past.
And there was also a suggestion that perhaps we would not fund a third coach for some sports. Will that be carried out, or?
That was an option I threw out there. I don't know that that's my decision to make. They're saying yes, maybe it is my decision, or.
I think that's your decision.
It's a spring sport, so you have some time, right?
Yeah.
Is that the only one?
Well, it's definitely an option. If you're looking for me to make the decision, I would say it's one that I am interested in exercising, but I would leave it to a discussion later in the year with Mr. Hague about where we are and if that's needed.
Anyone else? Mr. Jones?
Yeah, I don't have a question for you, Howie. So, but thank you for. I'll let you get back to all the other work you have to do. I just think I appreciate the committee considering this and the work that the administration has done, both to find money or work it and come up with a lot of different solutions on this. I think as we've talked before, decisions get made. Decisions got made in 2012, which necessitates some cuts here in other areas. I think this is giving at least time back for the administration to allocate a decision that at the time probably should have been more thoughtfully done. The previous committee and administration was under a very short time frame, though, to find a lot of money. So, those decisions had to be made. But I'm appreciative that we give the athletic department and our students the time and the resources to do what they need to do. And if we have to take cuts in this area or we find we can't stretch as much as we can, at least have a thoughtful plan on how we allocate the shortfall going forward. So I'm appreciative of the superintendent working with his leadership team to come up with the money, and I hope my fellow committee members support this.
I just want to mention I am very supportive of Mr. Hague's creative thinking in this area. I have some concerns, particularly in the fundraising area. And what I want to make sure of is that we're not, while I'm all for fairness among sports, I want to make sure that we're not in a very broad brush making things much more difficult for a lot of sports to try to even out a small number of sports. And all big on the fairness aspect of it, but I just want to be very careful that we're not overstretching the burden for the teams as a whole throughout the district in fundraising, which means, knocking on more doors and stretching, our local businesses and families with more fundraising requests. So I know you'll have a lot of oversight over that process, so I hope that we're careful about how we do this and that, the right decisions are made there. And I also hope that, as Mr. Jones said, that we're not in a position next year, when budget time rolls around, in a position where we're forced to undo this. It's something that we always end up looking at, and we'll put more thought into it, hopefully, this time around than may have had they had time for last time. But that's a concern of mine as well.
I guess, I concur with both Mr. Jones and Mr. Blasberg. I mean, I had a very lengthy conversation with Mr. Haig, and he's got a lot of creative ideas in how to raise funds. I think the committee has always been interested in trying to have more equality with the sports funding. My only concern is, as Mr. Blasberg alluded to, is when we come down to budget season next year and possibly having to cut things that might relate to the sports program. But I think we now have a full-time athletic director. We're thrilled to have Mr. Haig on board. And he does have a lot of creative ideas, so I think we owe it to the students and the school department to take this year, give them the extra funds, and see how it works out. So there's no further discussion. I have a motion. No, I don't have a motion. Do I have a motion to approve $15,000 to the sports funding?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Mrs. King, do you have anything to report on the CIP existing bond, future bond?
Just quickly, a couple of things. Again, the high school heating and ventilation project is wrapping up this week, so that's gone quite well. Also, I want to give the committee a heads up. There's been an awful lot of ruckus out there about what the town is and is not going to do with 100 Fairway Drive. There's been a lot of misinformation. There's been a lot of swords thrown. I just want to give the committee a heads up that at the September 22nd meeting, possibly we slip to the October 13th meeting, I will be asking for your vote to turn the 100 Fairway Drive former administration building over to the town. I have a letter from Mr. Embry, an email from Mr. Embry dated January 27th, that states the only thing that we need to do in order to turn that property back over to the town is for the school committee to vote on it, just like prior school committee did with Wickford Elementary School. So I do want to give you that heads up. If you have any questions, I had planned that it would be no later than October 1st. If we do slip, it won't slip too far. And I have been in constant communication with Phil Bergeron from the town for whatever it is he needs. We do need to work out some parking issues if the town hall is to move over there, which is one of the rumors that I have heard in the paper. But I'm confident that Mr. Bergeron and I can work it out. We've worked very well together. He's very cooperative with the school department, and I think that'll all go well. But I did want to give you that heads up. That's the plan right now for that building, for us to turn it over to the town, and you will have to take a formal vote to do that.
Thank you, Mrs. King. Is there any discussion regarding the policies? Can I have a motion to approve policy JLCE, emergencies, first aid, medications, and infectious diseases, updated as of August 2015?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We weren't going to talk about old
Oh,
business.
wait, you forgot one more thing.
Oh, sorry, so I'll withdraw the motion to adjourn?
Almost.
I withdraw the motion.
Almost.
It's not even 8 o'clock.
I was packed up. I was almost out. I was
This would be
halfway
a
in my car.
record. Mr.
Adjourn
McAllister,
before 8.
could you please give us an update on the Kingston Hill Academy litigation, please?
My associate attorney Polak is here. He's the one who's directly working on it, so if it's okay with you, he'll give the much more accurate update than I would.
Good evening. This won't take very long. As you all know, back in January this past year, Kingston Hill submitted an application with RIDE in an attempt or to seek approval to expand its enrollment from 180 students to 260 students. As part of that application, they proposed that they would increase their enrollment by 20 to 40 students for this coming fall. Ultimately, RIDE approved that their request to amend the charter. Apparently, however, as it turns out, the Department of Health did have some issues with Kingston Hill Academy's public water system. And apparently that public water system wasn't up to the applicable regulations. And as part of the discourse between Health and KHA, a consent agreement had been entered back at that point in time between those parties that effectively capped their enrollment to 180 students. Conveniently, however, Kingston Hill failed to bring this to RIDE's attention at the time that they submitted their request to expand. So on behalf of North Kingstown, we filed a request for a hearing with RIDE, just bringing this matter to their attention, and asking that they suspend their ability to expand pending bringing that water system up to compliance. Basically, at the end of the day, after a couple of hearings before RIDE and Kingston Hill did agree to abide by their original agreement, and they're capped at 185 currently, which is, I think, a win. I think that they would be at their 200 or 220 if North Kingstown didn't bring this matter to their attention. They are proposing and working to bring that water system up to the requisite amount to be able to provide for their proposed 260, but they haven't been able to do that yet. They tried to get it done for this coming fall, and they were unsuccessful. So it's a win. It's a temporary win, but it is a win nonetheless. And as we go forward, we'll be working to determine other matters to bring to RIDE's attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion? Mr. Jones?
Thank you. I'll just keep my comments brief. I just want, sometimes this gets painted as simply that the public schools and school committees and superintendents, are just, it's all about the money. I think our Mr. Pollack's kind of kind in his words to say that Kingston Hill conveniently forgot to mention something that had been in place for 5 years. They conveniently forgot to follow that for 2 years, and RIDE conveniently forgot to hold them to that standard for those 2 years as well. I guess I kind of look at the issue in terms of just fundamental fairness. I still question why our local media and others, our RIDE, our state agencies, let some of our local charter schools simply get away with things that, if was done in North Kingstown, would bring, hundreds of people out to complain and have us, looking at the superintendent and holding his feet to the fire. Kingston Hill for the last 2 years has failed to have an approved budget in place at the start of the fiscal year. If that was North Kingstown, we'd be under, and the town council would be under fire from the state auditor general if that was the case. They have run deficits for the last 2 years, and North Kingstown is well aware of the history we had when there was even a whiff of a deficit, not really a real one, and all the attention that got from the state. Yet our charter schools are allowed to run deficits, which is taxpayer money going there, seemingly without any oversight. Kingston Hill's allowed to have a situation where the equivalent here would be if, for example, I told the superintendent that all engineering services had to go through Mrs. McGovern's company, yet everyone seems perfectly comfortable with Kingston Hill to allow them to award a no-bid, hundreds of thousands of dollar contract to their parent organization and employ their board members as employees of their board, who is supposed to have independent governance. So, while people want to say we're sort of engaging in this simply, because it's about money, I would say two things. One is that, we have a responsibility to all our students, whether they're educated here or elsewhere, to ensure they're getting a safe and proper education to the extent we can. And we also have a responsibility to North Kingstown taxpayers to ensure that if our funds are going elsewhere, be it to out-of-district placements, charter schools or other, that money is being spent in at least a manner that people can speak for our taxpayers. Those boards have very little governance. We rely on RIDE to hold them accountable, or other agencies, and yet those organizations seem to not really care about providing their proper oversight role. So I would say I think it was good that this committee, at least asked that our charter schools abide by all the rules that we need to play by, and hopefully this will send a message that maybe RIDE should do a little more due diligence when it looks at charter school applications or expansions or their annual governance responsibilities.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Is there any discussion regarding, under reports, correspondence, special reports, standing subcommittee reports, or ad hoc committee reports? Can I now have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.